Israel's strength. Even the West relies on Israel's position. Israel has become effectively a regional superpower in the last 2 years and proven itself. So why are people so coy? Why are the Arab states? Why is Britain? Why is Europe?
For different reasons. The Arabs, I can very well understand. They have a very radical public opinion. These regimes have a problem, all the regimes in the Arab world, in the region, have a problem of legitimacy. And in order to be legitimate in the eyes of their own misguided people, and we can go into it if you're interested, but I think there are more interesting things now to discuss why Arab public opinion is so radical. They have to pretend as if they hate Israel and if they wish bad for Israel. And very, very few, and in the United Arab Emirates more than anywhere else, are they willing to say openly to some extent why they want to be with Israel. But even in the UAE, it is difficult. So they must pretend. Look, if King Abdullah would come to me today from Jordan and he would ask me, what is my advice? I would say, you curse Israel 3 times a day, do it 5 times a day, your public opinion needs it. And you can cooperate with Israel, for instance, assist in intercepting missiles and cruise missiles coming from Iran over Jordanian territory and cooperate with Israel through CENTCOM, through the American army here in the region. So that's much more important for me. It's much more important for me that Saudi Arabia can cooperate with Israel than normalize relations with Israel. Now, if they all want to love Israel and open embassies and speak Yiddish in the Arab world, I'm not against it. And my grandmother had a strategic comment on the subject. She used to say that it's better to be healthy, rich, and young than old, sick, and poor. Yes, it would be very nice if we also had peace and everybody loved us, but the most important thing is that they fear us and they say, you don't F with the Jews. In other words, they're not only strong, but if you push them to the corner, they can be very, very nasty if they don't have another choice. So that's the Arab world. Coming to Europe, Europe needs to tell itself a story and to capitulate. Okay, the Europeans have been capitulating for a long time. And if they don't have an Adolf, they want a Joseph. And if they don't have a Joseph, they need a Yasser. And they have a picture of the world where, you know, not all Europeans, and Europe is changing, and some of the changes in Europe are very positive. But you start out particularly with the left in Europe, and this changed. In the 50s and the 60s, if you were a socialist, you were pro-Israeli, and if you were a right-winger, you used to be anti-Israeli and very often an anti-Semite. Now, the more to the left you are in Europe, the more you're anti-Israeli. So you can see it in Spain, you can see it in Ireland, in Norway, you can see it in the different parties in most countries. You can see in Britain, in your country. The more to the left you are, I mean, if you're really a terrorist supporter, you're Corbyn, okay? If you're willing to have an embargo on Israel, you're the Labour. If you want to be basically positive to Israel, then you're with the Conservatives. And I don't know about Nigel Farage, but I will not be surprised if he will be more pro-Israeli than the Conservatives. So in Europe, wherever you have left-leaning governments, also in other parts, but this is an important part of it, you will have the kind of criticism of Israel and the kind of sometimes even hostility to Israel to the extent that you have it in Ireland. By the way, in Ireland, everybody is anti-Israeli. The Irish are, you know, in the Czech Republic, everybody is pro-Israeli, and in Ireland, everybody is anti-Israeli. But in many other countries, the more to the left you are, the more anti-Israel.
And why do you think that is? Why has there been that switch?
Because in the 1950s and 1960s, we did not yet have this malaise that is now threatening Western civilization, namely the progressive. let me put it this way. When you're a liberal and a civilized person, you fight the barbarians with one hand tied behind your back because you're a civilized person and you wouldn't do to them what they're doing to us. But when you're a progressive, you tie your second hand behind your back and you say that if you cannot defend yourself, there is something morally admirable when you can't defend yourself. And also, if you're a real progressive, you're a racist because you believe that if somebody is white, he is not only responsible for his terrible wrongdoing, but if somebody with pigments is a barbarian, white people are responsible for it because of colonialism and because of slavery. In other words, you have to be really stupid and completely ignorant. In other words, a university, a product of a university, in order to have this progressive attitude where you become as racist, even more racist than the fascists. You also are against free speech, like the fascists, or you cancel people, you destroy people, not only if they say something wrong, but if they don't say something that you think is right in the last fashion that they must keep up with, and actively say stupid things because this is what makes them popular. If you're really deep into woke culture, into progressive culture. And I don't have a problem with these cuckoos because, you know, insanity is legal. Why shouldn't they be allowed to be insane? My problem is that they have an impact with liberals. This is my problem. Liberals are dumb enough to believe that progressives are more liberal than they are. They don't understand that the number one enemy of every idea is the extreme expression of this idea. Who is the number one enemy of nationalism and patriotism? The fascists. Too much nationalism, too much patriotism. Who is the enemy of Jewish national identity? The ultra-Orthodox, because they twist it and become parasites and are racist and are the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people. I think that the Haredim in Israel, I'm not speaking about what's happening outside Israel where ultra-Orthodox people work, okay? I'm speaking about what is happening in Israel, the hardcore of the Haredi community. So they're the enemy of Jewish identity, who wants to adopt Jewish identity or to express more his Jewish identity when this is the ultimate expression of Jewish identity. And the same goes with liberals. If you are willing to give up self-defense, which is what they do, if you believe that you're guilty of anything wrong in the world, and by the way, here is an interesting thing. Jews are white even when they're black. In other words, you can be an Ethiopian Jew, but you're guilty because you're a Jew. You just need to study what's happening in Harvard, what's happening in Columbia, and to see what kind of cuckoo ideas. And they put in danger Western civilization. Because if you don't destroy the barbarians, they will destroy you. The barbarians are not equal. They're inferior. You need to break them. You can't negotiate with them. You can't appease them. They want to kill you, okay? People in Gaza say, not only Hamas, the Muslim Brothers, they say this is how they educate their children. We will win because we love death, and the Jews will lose because they love life. Yeah. And they get up in the morning to kill Jews, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with occupation, because as far as they're concerned, we are occupiers here in Tel Aviv. And they want to kill Jews, not only Israelis, not only Zionists. They say so, openly. So, if you have a society in the West where liberals, good guys in the Democratic Party, like Nancy Pelosi, like the leader of the Senate in the Democratic Party, good guys, when they listen to the progressives, when they're afraid of the progressives, then they become a menace to Western civilization because they deprive us from the ability to take the necessary action in order to demonstrate to the barbarians that they can't win and prevent them physically from winning. Israel needed to prove, and I think we have in this war proven, that in spite of everything you could master against Israel, from the terrorism to the progressives, all the enemies of Israel together could not prevent Israel from hitting very hard the radicals in the Middle East, and something that we will discuss in a moment if you want, the new strategies that Israel is adopting after October 7th, that will make it much easier for Israel to defend itself in the future.
So everything in moderation is basically what you're saying. If you're a nationalist, in moderation. If you're a liberal, in moderation. But there seems to be a failure to appreciate that, especially in the West. There's a sort of suicidal empathy. How do we confront that? How do we get the West to wake up to this problem?